connecting neuroscience to art is amazing. So, it really helps you connect with how you can transform a person's feelings during an experience so that they can go from, walking into a space and looking forward to it to really feeling elevated and excited as they exit the space as well. So there's so much the canvas and the tools that we have to create things that are transformative for people's lives is growing every day. And that's amazing.
Dorothy, this is so great to speak to you.
It's a pleasure to speak to you also.
Dorothy, but I read about the amazing work you're doing, and I also read that you started out in graphic design.
That's correct. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting, right? So I think it took me a while to work out what I wanted to be when I grow up, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I've always had a passion for art in general. Like I love beautiful things, right? And I think that passion kind of led me in lots of different directions. So I was trying to study and work my way through, the maze of what shall I, do with my career. And
Sorry, just to ask, did you come from an artistic family, or in school did you study some form of art, like
so
music
I,
or dance?
yeah, so I was a cellist for many years. I also did piano. I think everyone did piano, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
and I like my cello teacher was the lead cellist for one of the symphony orchestras in Australia, and he only ever took on one student, so I was that student. So I was actually quite proficient in the cello, and I could have taken that to a career, and I enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like it was my thing, right? It felt like when I played and when I performed, I had this real connection with an audience, but I felt there was more that I wasn't, tapping into. I also did dancing, ballet for many, many years. And my parents, while they're not artistic, my mum was very, um, I think she wanted us to be musicians and,
Oh, okay.
she exposed us to culture. So I have a very broad understanding of music. I can listen to almost any genre, apart from death metal and yodeling, which I just don't understand. But apart from that, I can really listen to any kind of music. And I think that's really helped to form who I am as a
Oh, yes.
person. So so then I started doing all these different studies, from multimedia to, as I was saying, architectural drafting. I did marketing. Yeah, so I studied all these different things, and I guess the first opportunity I had was working as a marketing consultant, marketing coordinator. So it was a very low level role, and what they gave me was, I guess I realized at that point that I really loved design. So it
Oh,
allowed
yeah.
me to work with graphic designers, and it also highlighted a skill that I have, which is I'm very good at encouraging people and, ensuring that they feel that they're, valued. And a lot of people, particularly in things like graphic design, what the understanding of what it takes to create, a lot of people don't have that, right? So they're very judgmental around, make that smaller, make that bigger, 10% darker, whatever it is, right?
Exactly. I know
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah.
There's so much that goes into it. All of their study revolves around color and how that impacts, and fonts and why you use that font and all that research that they do beforehand. So it's far more in depth than people really understood, or understand, sorry. And so I guess because I worked with that graphic designer, I felt that there was something there for me. And so I left the position I was in as a marketing consultant from one of the universities. And I guess I let a whole bunch of people know, hey, I'm leaving, blah, blah, blah. And the company that I was coordinating with from a graphic design perspective, they reached out and said, hey, would you like to work with us from a development perspective, like a business development? And I said, sure. So I jumped on board and I eventually took over that company, and then I guess I've always been very forward thinking. So a lot of people talk to me and say, "Oh, do you remember that time, whatever year that we did this thing?" And I'm like, "No, I don't remember," because I'm very focused
Really?
on the future.
Okay.
And, yeah, and so I could see that the industry was dying because, or I could also see that things like 99 Design were coming around, which people thought was fantastic. You pay $100 and you get this really awful logo, but people are unaware that it's not a good logo. And I thought, wow.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm totally
So,
with you on that. Yeah. Mm.
so I moved the company from graphic design to video production and animation, and we really had the skills in house to be able to do that and do that really well. And that was a great move at the time. And then I guess after a while, I started seeing that okay, there was all this offshore, animators that you could hire, and again, it didn't mean the quality was great, but it was answering the client's needs and they didn't know any better. So it was okay. I need to move this company into something else. And then I had this, it was one of those stars align moments, when you're reaching out to the universe and you say, I'm looking for my next step. Like, what
Oh,
do I do now?
yes.
And I had someone give me some tickets to an event that they couldn't attend. And so I went to see this event, and the key speaker was talking about the power of experiences, right? And how it really impacts us as a person. And I literally went in, and I guess my team were used to this with me. I kind of like, tomorrow we're going to drop this. We're not doing any more animation and
Okay.
video production, and we're moving into this space of immersive art.
Mm.
Luckily, I had already moved the company into a space where we were working with arts organizations only. So we had moved from, just generic graphic design and animation to really focusing on the arts. So we were kind of prepared, right, to move into this next space. But we had to then do so much research, see what's happening on the global market. And we started then working on small scale exhibitions for museums, and that's, I guess, our entry into this space was doing that kind of work, and very focused on the Australian market. And then I guess the reputation, because we're being very original in our innovation. So, doing so much research to really look at what's been created and not to replicate, maybe to get some inspiration, but to really create something that's never been done before, right? And
But let me
sometimes I
just
think that
ask you, here, with these new ideas that you bring out, how did people receive it? The people you work with,
it
were they
depended.
skeptical
Yeah,
or?
it depended on who we were communicating
Oh,
with.
okay,
So
okay.
sometimes with government organizations, they want a safe transition. So they're very much into, we've seen this thing, it was created in Texas and it did really, really well, and we want that. So
Oh,
they
yeah.
weren't thinking about, okay, our demographic is different. We're not looking at that age group. We're really thinking about, families and how does that transition. But they were looking for something that was safe. It had already, it had the tick of approval in that it had a lot of people interacting with it. But I was very clear that that's not the space that I wanted to work in. I really respect artists and their ideas, and I never want to be I never want to play in that space where we are just replicating, right?
Yes,
And taking someone's idea and
totally.
just
Mm.
pretending that it's ours, right? And I always think we draw inspiration. We definitely do. Like I can see certain elements from some of the things that I've worked on where I can see some inspiration from some of the artists that I absolutely love. But it's never replication. It's always, that's the spark that starts the conversation to help us create something that's different.
Mm. But that's wonderful that you also have that appreciation, because I think artists have also their specific ideas of how they want things to do, or to do things, but also are open to this other way of thinking, and thinking, okay, but this way I can get my art to more people, or people could experience it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a misalignment. It's not a misalignment. It's a way that artists and clients communicate with each other. The artist is very passionate and what's the word for it? They love their idea. So to work with a client that's rigid and has their own ideas about what this could potentially be, there can be some real disconnect in that conversation. Because I've worked on both sides, so I've worked as a
Oh
client
yeah.
and I've worked as working with artists to create things. I'm very good at having that conversation in the middle, being that person in the middle that can ensure that the artist is, that I'm fighting for the artist and their work while also ensuring that the client is happy with the outcome of the project. And it's a real skill to be able to have that conversation. I mean, an artist is a passionate, emotional creature that, has so many beautiful stories to tell. And that passion sometimes with clients, particularly if they're rigid clients, right? And they're, sometimes that doesn't translate. They want what they want. And having an emotional person trying to explain why this is the answer to global poverty
Yeah.
it doesn't always resonate, right?
Yeah, that's true. And many artists that I speak to uh, always say, if they can do their art and have somebody else do the rest, and I'm sure they mean that take it out into the world and so for people to see and experience, but that they can focus on creating this art.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. So I'm in the process of setting up an artist agency. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think as curators, sometimes it's very easy for it to be all about us, right? We're so important, we're curators, and to forget that while we have the vision for what should be created or what kind of artists we want to work with, it's not our work, right? We're assisting to create something, but it very much is all about the artist and what they're producing, right? And I think being able to see that is really important, and to remove that ego around being a curator. And so the artist agency I'm currently looking to set up is very much around promoting artists. So I get tired of going to events, particularly festivals, where the artwork is on display and the festival is on display, and it's all about the festival, and you don't know who's created what's the meaning behind those
Yes.
pieces.
Mm,
And it feels like there needs to be more emphasis on the human being that is creating the artwork.
absolutely.
So, right. And so the agency is
Absolutely.
about that. It's about promoting the artist and really making them the forefront of this, again, highlighting the human, right? But also creating something that isn't exclusive. So the agency is not about bringing artists on board and saying you can only work with me and and no one else. My ethos is very much around I want to help the arts industry, and by locking artists into any kind of contract agreement where they are unable to get work outside of working with me goes against that, right? So, that's the next step for me.
But this is so wonderful because just while you're talking, I'm just thinking of how many artists, and I'm talking about sculptors now and painters, have told me that art galleries sort of prescribe what they want because it sells and what they don't want. And I know I spoke to a wonderful sculptor in South Africa who has these amazing artworks, but there's such a lovely story behind it. And he was also complaining about the same thing. They don't want this anymore because that's not selling well enough. And I think, well, I think if more people heard the story behind it, then maybe, or maybe if it's just presented in a different way, people will understand what the meaning behind it is.
But I think there's a really great quote of Monet's, which I absolutely love. And I'm not going to say it correctly because I can't remember word for word. But essentially, he said, people look at my work as if they need to understand when all they need to do is love, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
so for me,
That's
what's
true.
really important is I don't want to create work with artists and create any kind of exhibition or whatever where people walk into the space and they feel ignorant because they don't understand what's going on, right? Art shouldn't be about that. We should all be able to interpret it in our own special way and sure, understand what the artist's meaning is behind it. That's crucial, right? But I think we need to take art out of this sometimes lofty space where it's for the people that can appreciate, right? And it's not about that. It really is. Art's so important to community. It's so important in general. And we really need to make it a part of everyday life, right? Not something that's just sprinkled on top when we've got budget or anything like that. I mean, that's the goal for me.
Yeah, and also trust people to appreciate the art and not, one person to decide what you're going to like or not. Allow people to enjoy the art. But I spoke to the neuroscientist, Professor Anjan Chatterjee, and we were talking about the experience of art, and he said that sometimes people think art is just to be enjoyed in a concert hall or a specific space, but that, if you go to church and it's the church choir singing, it's also art, or if you go into nature and you experience nature, it's also a form of art. And exactly like you're saying, we've sometimes put art in specific boxes to say, okay, this is art, this is not art, but actually we are immersed in art every day.
Absolutely. I mean, the movies that we watch, the books that we read, like there's so much art around us. And I think, I think taking it out of that space, which is, I guess, the reason why I work in the area that I work in, which is in the intersection of art and technology, because it feels like that is more approachable to everyday people, right? So that they start understanding that. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of the Van Gogh experiences. Some are good, some are really bad, but
yeah,
but yeah, but I guess the outcome of some of that is that people are being educated, not only about Van Gogh, which is great, right? So if we take away the negative aspects of the Van Gogh experience, some people have never even heard of Van Gogh, right? So all of a sudden, they walk into a room and there's these big images of Van Gogh. From a professional perspective, it's not well produced. It's very much a money grabbing, exercise for a lot of people, which is sad because We want people to be exposed to good art, right? To be done, to be quality, to ensure that the sound is as perfect in the room and the visuals are captivating and all of that. But people aren't stupid either. So, once they've seen a
100%. Yeah.
video, they then go to another thing. They're like, well, this looks exactly the same. There's nothing different here. And they're ready for the next thing. Like, how do we add something to that experience to make it far more compelling? So it keeps us on our toes, right? It ensures that we're not just pumping out the Monet experience globally or the,
Yeah.
Kandinsky experience globally. So yeah, it's an ever evolving space, but it really allows us to connect with people on a far deeper level. And I think one of the things that's come out of it is this word immersive, right? And I guess I get frustrated with this word because it became so popular that everything is immersive, right? But a true immersion comes from a lot of different things, right? So when you truly immerse someone in an experience, you're trying to connect with as many of the five senses as possible. You're trying to help them escape their reality for that moment in time and almost make them feel like the experience wouldn't be there without their presence,
Exactly.
right? So, so I try and carefully use that word because the Van Gogh experience is not an immersive experience because people are just viewing things on a wall, which is very much a traditional exhibition experience, but using projection rather than, framed canvases.
And I think something like that is also it's experiencing it, but leaving you with something that makes you think for a few days or weeks or so on, or something that in years you can still reflect back on it, or it's that type of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as practitioners in this space, the goal is never to create something like a uniformed experience, right? And never to think that everyone is equal. So
Yeah.
everyone will walk it. Like if you and I were to walk into an experience, we will have a very different outlook on what we've just seen and how that's affected us. And that's due to our level of understanding of the artwork, where we are personally at the moment. From an intellectual or, if we've got any personal dramas in our life or, any of that, all of that stuff that we have personally comes into that when we enter an experience, right? So I might walk away and never having seen art before and say, well, that was really pretty. And, I had a great time. And that's wonderful, right? Because we've introduced them to something that potentially they've never seen before. However, they might then go to another event down the track and that event might remind them of what they have seen. And there might be this incredible connection that happens for them, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is we're not all the same. We can't produce something and expect everyone to have the same feeling or interaction with it. And that's a beautiful thing. It shouldn't be something that we're trying to force.
Exactly. And I think that experience, I'm just thinking now, yesterday I met a lady in a restaurant and she was sitting on a sofa. It's this eclectic interior, and she was sitting on a sofa and she was saying, my grandma had exactly this sofa, and she as a child bit on the wood of the sofa and her little teeth marks were there. And she was stroking this sofa and she was saying, oh, this reminds me so much of my grandmother now. And yeah, how she was talking, and I was thinking, this is just a normal sofa for anybody. But she had this experience on this sofa that I wouldn't have if I sit on the sofa. So it's exactly what you mean. We don't all,
Yeah.
it's somewhere this connection that makes us experience something.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever possible, I try and introduce scent into our experience as well. There's some really great statistics around how scent is linked to memory recall. So, exactly what you were saying about that person and the couch. When we smell things, it brings up these memories for us. Food is also one of those things where you eat something and it reminds you of your
Oh,
mother's
yes.
cooking, or and it brings back these beautiful memories. So that's what I was referring to when we immerse people. It's creating those kind of environments where those memories are enhanced and they can connect with it on a much deeper level.
The food part that you're mentioning now, I actually just read recently in Your Brain on Art, Susan McSimon's book, where they actually gave people specific things to eat while they view a painting. And then also that experience, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was this giving them this whole experience of hearing sounds, tasting something, watching the painting. And yeah, that's amazing that you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've worked with neuroscientists before as well. And that's quite an extraordinary experience as well. Like connecting neuroscience to art is amazing. So, it really helps you connect with how you can transform a person's feelings during an experience so that they can go from, walking into a space and looking forward to it to really feeling elevated and excited as they exit the space as well. So there's so much the canvas and the tools that we have to create things that are transformative for people's lives is growing every day, and that's amazing. I'm part of a group called the Transformation Architects, and what we do is we look at industry. So at the moment, we're working on a project that's looking at funerals and how to
Wow.
I guess look at them in a different way. Like how do we move them from what they've been for a really long time, move into their next space? And the group brings all these people together globally to be able to work on this particular project, and just getting that insight from neuroscientists, from experienced designers, from all kinds of walks of life is quite eye opening. And I think there's a lot of industries where we can do that, and art is one of those things that when done well, art is so transformative. It's so important in our society, and I don't think people really understand how important it is.
Absolutely. And this is why I'm also so passionate about children in the education system, that art is available for children to experience and not and to take part in and express themselves. And I think art, and it's been proven already that art is important as much as sciences and maths. That this should really be a main subject in our schools.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And music is another one. I mean, I think music is more widely recognized. So I think a lot more schools, introduce children to music. But art is very much one of those subjects where at the moment it feels like they need it in the curriculum, but it's not really as important as all of the other things. And particularly in Australia, I think it's one area where we really lack. We focus on things like sport, which is important, obviously, from physical
Yeah.
education.
Mm.
But to really have a well-rounded child, it needs to be more than science, maths, and sport, right? We do need them to explore these other avenues like art, and it does develop them and it allows them to look at the world in a different way. And one of the things I do, I have a 13-year-old son, and one of the things I've done with him ever since he was young was we walk out in nature and I point out clouds to him, or I say, look at that flower. and I don't think enough of that happens. So now he says to me, oh, look, the leaves on the trees, they're like yellow and red now. And I think we've lost that. I think we're so busy trying to achieve and strive and whatever that we don't stop and reflect. And a lot of nature, I mean, a lot of artists are inspired by nature as well. I know in the Scandinavian countries, and I'm not gonna guess which one because I've forgotten, but they do a lot of education or classroom education outside now. So the kids spend a lot of time outside. They have less contact hours a day and they're thriving. Like they're absolutely killing it from an academic perspective. I think a lot of Western education really needs to be looked at and those kinds of things introduced.
Absolutely. Those transferable skills that children acquire when they pursue an art form, that helps them further in life as well, and not just in careers. I think just in life itself, just your everyday life. So I think it's really so important.
Well, for me, nature and art is almost like that it's almost like that moment that gives you time to breathe outside of everything
Yeah.
else that's going on in your life, right? So to be able to use, that side of your brain and to just relax and really take in what you're seeing, or if you're painting or whatever, it's so important, honestly.
But you also work globally.
Mhm.
Mm. And did you ever, when you started out, did you ever think this was going to be a global enterprise?
I didn't, no. I think one of the things someone asked me that recently, and I guess in the traditional corporate environment, right, we're always taught, well, we need to have 5-year goals and we need to have 10-year goals and we need to, structure ourselves so we're heading in this direction or in that direction. And I really attribute my ability to be where I am at the moment and to be able to work globally um, with being flexible and just going where life has taken me. So there's been a lot
Okay.
of opportunities that if I had structured myself and said, I'm only doing this, this, and this because that's my 5-year goal, it would have taken me in a different route. And I think while setting goals is important, right? Like we want to have, we want to have a direction that we want to go in general, but also being flexible like water and just letting life take us to where where we should be going. I think that's really important. And it's been instrumental in getting me to where I am. So I look at some of the projects that I work on. I travel a lot and I work with the best artists in the world. And, I sometimes I think I have no idea how I got here. Like, honestly.
Really?
I really don't, because I mean, I can look at the steps and go, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
that's how I got here. But it blows me away, like that it's gotten to this point, and I'm always looking at how what have I learned along the way, and how has that been, instrumental in helping me to get to this point? And the key things, I think, have been the genuine appreciation for artists, and so being called on to work with artists that I've worked with before because they know that I understand them and that I'll protect their integrity and that I don't have an ego around it, that it's not about me at any point. It's about how we can create something that's amazing. That's been, really important. And that really goes back to that first graphic design, kind of position that I was in, and see the work that goes behind some of the stuff, because I don't paint and I don't draw. I have design skills, like I can, I can create something and it'd be really beautiful, but I'm not an artist. I wouldn't call myself an artist. Um, but I appreciate when something's been done and the work that goes behind it, and and the person that's created it. And I think that's really helped me to get where I am.
But if an artist approaches you, then you look at do they approach you with what can you do for me, or do they approach you with a specific idea already?
It depends on the project, but usually they've been approached by someone. They have this project in mind, or a client's reached out to them, or a client's reached out to me. It depends on the circumstances. And then they say, we're thinking about working with this client. Would you help, instigate the conversation and, help us with this project? So that's usually how I come on board. And I guess the other skill that I have is I'm always trying to push artists to experiment, right? So I always say to them, particularly because I work in that space of technology and art, right? I work with artists that do photography, and they, as an example, they create a cosmic world using liquids and photography, and and how the liquids interact, or the chemicals interact with the liquids, and all of that. And I say to them, have you ever thought about creating like an experience where people can actually walk into a room and see your work, and this is potentially something that you could use this kind of technology or what, and that sparks something in them. They get really excited, and then we start collaborating from that perspective. So I help them work out how we can really connect to an audience, what kind of tech, how we should potentially shape a room. But it's a very collaborative process. I never force any of my ideas onto them. It's more about inspiring them to go beyond what they currently do.
And when you start a project initially, and do you ever afterwards look back and think, wow, I didn't expect it to end up being this? Because there must be an evolution in your work, that you start off with this idea, but then one idea inspires another idea, and then the end product is probably not always the same as that you imagined it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens all the time. And I think it has something to do with the scale of a project as well. So a lot of the projects I work on are really big scale. So to then see this thing that you walk under, like the image behind me,
Oh,
that's
yes.
one of
Yeah.
the projects I worked on. That artist is Christopher Bowder. And then that work was actually part of a festival, and it was placed in the middle of the Saudi desert. So it was incredible. Yeah. So a lot of times it's that standing in front of something and seeing the scale of it, but then it's seeing the artist so happy with the finished product. Like I connect more with that, with they're just so happy and grateful that they've been able to produce something. And then to see audience interact with them, and again to see the artist thinking, oh my goodness, I've been able to have this impact on this audience. That takes my breath away. That's amazing.
And that's wonderful that you think like that, that you think about the artist and probably also the people, the people who experience it.
Yeah. I'm a passionate human being, and these people that I have, I feel like privileged. I feel privileged every single day that I get to work with artists that are so passionate about what they do. They're so inspiring to be around. It again, it blows my mind that that's my job. That's what I get to do every day. And And, it's just, yeah, I can't even explain. It's like Christmas every day, Petra.
Really. And I can just imagine you also you view the world a little bit differently because of what you've created. You see possibilities in things.
I think I do. I think, I guess if we're talking about goals again, like my goal is to, like I said before, to make art a part of everyday life. I see its potential. I see how it impacts people. I work with these passionate, wonderful human beings who I just want to help to ensure that their careers are long lasting and that they're creating things that they're really proud of and they can put on their portfolio. There's so much wonder. There's so much wonder in our world. Like, we have this beautiful
True.
planet. It is just so gorgeous, and we have the ability to create art that inspires people to connect with nature or to understand that, we're impacting the earth in a negative way, or whatever the story is that we're being told. There is always a connection to the world around us and how important and how beautiful it is.
Mm. That's absolutely true. And I think the more things like what you are creating, the more people feel comfortable in that space, because not everybody feels comfortable, going into an art gallery or enjoy an art gallery because it's just specific. You have also this connotation about art as being in an art gallery or a specific space, but that we almost open it up to people to just experience, for everybody to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the goal, right? The goal is to ensure that everyone can experience art and that they don't feel that they need to understand it to love it, right? Like Monet said. So I think the space that I work in is bridging that gap. And I think what's exciting about that is that then people, as our industry evolves, as the interactive and light art, and as that evolves and people become more used to seeing that there will be a connection to the art galleries. People will then say, well, okay, I understand art, I love art, and I'm going to now go to an art gallery and just enjoy the beautiful artworks on the walls,
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's so much potential for that. I think it's that making that word art friendlier, right?
Yeah.
Easier to
Yeah.
digest.
Yeah. But do you must be very inquisitive, and do you keep up with the latest technology and finding out what else is there that I can use for these experiences?
So I'm not a technical person as such. I work with artists that have that technical know-how, but by working with them, it allows me to understand how things operate.
Oh,
And
okay.
I couldn't tell you, that projector is a Sony whatever, but I know that, okay, we need this kind of projector to be able to do this kind of work, or
Oh, yeah.
they're using particular lighting, and that does inspire me to do other things. But I think it's also really important, again, as much as we appreciate artists, to then also appreciate the suppliers that provide the products, right? Because a lot of times you can work with those suppliers. If you have a really good relationship, you can say, well, we're thinking of using this product. And they say, well, actually, there was this other product that was used by this other artist, and this was the outcome. And that could be more
See.
compelling, or that could really, it could shine further, or it could create this kind of mood or whatever. So being able to have that respectful relationship with, vendors and suppliers is also crucial.
Mm. And like you say, it's also art. There's also a shift in the fact that um, art is also, or artists are also the ones using the technology. If you think of lighting design and you think of sound engineers, but they're also artists, for being able to do that.
Absolutely. I think one of the loveliest events I've ever been to, I adjudicated a projection mapping festival. I think it was just after COVID, and it was in France. And I'd never been around projection mappers before, and they are this beautiful combination of half geek and half artist, right? So they know all the tech and they're talking about all the technology, and they're also able to do these incredible artworks on, like beautiful architecture. And what else is amazing about that community is there's a really, particularly in Europe, there's almost like a connection between festivals that allows these artists to go from one festival to the next festival, which means that they can work for, a lot of the year, which I haven't seen anywhere else in the world. And that keeps them active as an artist, but it also creates a family environment. So they all know each other really well and they travel together, and it's really a beautiful experience. If you ever get a chance to attend one of those, like it's lovely.
I will. And you say it's in Europe.
Yeah, so the one I went to was in Lille. That's the one in France. So that was the one I adjudicated. I've been to it. I've been to a few others as well. So I was just in one in Alice Beach in the US, and it's just gorgeous. Like honestly, the community that's been formed with these artists is incredible.
Amazing. But Dorothy, you talked about we talked about goals now, but what is the dream? What is your dream?
Well, apart from making art part of everyday life, which I'm hoping, I don't think it's just something that I can do on my own, but I'm hoping I can help move it towards that. It's very much setting up this artist agency. That's very much my goal. It's going to take a while to set up, and I want to do it correctly, and I want to ensure that the tools that we provide allow artists to promote their exhibitions, and it connects to this global network of incredible other artists and whatever, but also that so apart from the agency, just really thinking about how we can create more projects in places that haven't been tapped into. So locations like Australia is actually a really good market. Like I do no work in Australia at the moment, and so I'm really trying to tap into that and push the boundaries of what's currently being created. I feel Australia is very safe in their artwork and the representation and how they treat artists as well. I think it needs to be stepped up a bit. So I have some big goals, but I'm very excited about the future. And I think, I think I'm heading in that direction. And I can see from a global perspective that, the industry is constantly moving, and the operators that were creating works that really didn't resonate or that were done to, for a money grab, they're being pushed out, and, because people are becoming savvy, and, you have to keep moving. And once you've upset people, it's very hard to come back from that.
Absolutely. And I think it's also that don't underestimate the audience, because
Absolutely.
people have just a natural way of knowing and of knowing what they like and what is beautiful. And I think we have that. We don't have to be persuaded that we're wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, art is a feeling thing, right? It's an emotional thing. It taps into that, our emotions. So Even if we don't know why we don't like something, we instinctively know that it doesn't
Absolutely.
resonate with me, or that something doesn't feel quite right, or this experience isn't compelling, and why. We don't have to analyze why. Well, from a non-professional perspective, I mean, from a professional perspective, I think the thing that ruins an experience for me, at its basic core element, is when the music and the visuals don't align. So music is
I'm with you.
it's so
Yeah.
important, right? And when we enter an experience and music is just playing and it's on loop and whatever, and there's no connection to any of the visuals, it's just a huge disconnection with the artwork. You don't feel it, right? Music is for me more important than the visual, honestly, when it comes to these kinds of experiences, because if you go to symphony orchestra concert, you don't just sit there and listen, right? There's highs and lows in what you're
Yeah.
listening to, and it pulls at your heartstrings in certain moments. You feel the sadness in the music without knowing the story.
True.
Some people cry, some people feel joy. It's super powerful if we use it correctly.
Mm. Well, I sat at a ballet, and it was Sleeping Beauty that was redone, and the lighting and the decor and the costumes and the music, just nothing for me
Oh no, that's
worked
awful.
together. And when I left the theater, I felt really something. It was disturbing. It was like I don't want to see this again. And but it's true, that these things we have, and you, yes, I could say this and that, but this feeling that you have, that no, this is not
Yes.
working for me. So I totally agree with you. Mm.
Yeah, I went to an experience. It was actually a van. No, it was I think it was called Monet and Friends experience, and it was produced by the same organization that did a really bad Van Gogh. So it was just
Okay.
another one of the. But I happened to be in that city at the time, and I thought I'll go and check it out. Um, and they had tried to incorporate scent into the experience, but we're trying to eradicate chemicals from our lives, right? And all this was like a large plug-in scent thing that was just spraying this floral scent throughout the room, and it was overpowering and awful. And it was literally all you could concentrate on was this just strong, overpowering floral scent in the
Mm.
space. And it doesn't take much, right? So whenever someone approaches me and says, I want to create this thing and I've got a certain budget, and, I talked about trying to engage with as many of the five senses, it's like, don't engage with all of the senses if you don't have the budget to do it correctly, right? So
Exactly. Yeah. Don't
make
do
sure
it just for the sake of doing it.
make sure the visuals and the audio is very strong, and that's enough, right, to be able to connect with people, but it has to be done well.
Mm. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I absolutely love what you do, really, and I love also that not just that you do these exhibitions or that you do these events, but that you also have in mind the power of the art, the power of the artist, and that you also have that connection with the artist, and that you want to make art meaningful for people. That's wonderful.
Thank you so much, Petra. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting with you today.